heart, I am a technologist. This is the one-slide summary of my entire professional career. It's the transition from analog to digital. And I was backstage, looking at you, trying to see if there were still people in this audience who actually learned how to type on an old mechanical typewriter. And I'm sure if you raise your hand, there's going to be a few of you who still learn on a mechanical typewriter. I mean, yeah, okay, well, that's a lot. I didn't know this was a geriatric society. Thank you for inviting me. And this has been, for me, extremely wonderful 3 decades of observing them. I am a technologist with a passion. Some of you know this. I am one of the largest collectors of Apple computers in the world. In Europe, I'm number 3. This has been the #1 source of tension in my marriage over the last 27 years. And I found a solution for that when I bought a church here in Belgium to house my collection. I bought it 4 years ago, and it was finished the week before we went into our first lockdown. So for more than a year, I did webinars in my Apple chapel. And that's why I'm really glad to be with a really live audience. But this transition is something that we have all experienced, that you have all experienced in your lifetime. And I wrote a book on this more than 10 years ago called The New Normal. I hated the title now, I thought it was sexy 10 years ago. But I wanted to describe a world where digital stops being special. And when I was listening to your story about digital transformation, I thought, wow, it's kind of interesting, because does digital transformation still make sense in a world where digital has become normal? I was in Italy, where an Italian artist had painted the logos of today onto the things of the past, where you could see how things were disappearing. If you could see how the media was transforming entire industries, how a community now lives differently, and I love this, 2 old ladies chatting around. It was a wonderful societal reflection on a world where we're all connected, we're never offline, and it's not always a good thing. This is one of my favorite slides, 2 people in bed, faces illuminated by the shining of their smartphones, and the irony is they're probably talking to each other. They're communicating who's going to bring back the kids from school the next day. We trust technology with an almost blind faith in these days. And we've become addicted. I mean, certainly when you look at social, it is incredibly powerful how addictive these things are. TikTok is the fastest growing technological phenomenon we have ever observed. And it's not just the speed and scale, it is the amount of time. People who have TikTok on their phone on average spend 96 minutes in the TikTok app every single day. And if you combine that with the geopolitical tensions that we have, all of a sudden we see consequences of digital that we could have never imagined. But what is fascinating is that all of these phenomena follow a very, very traditional simple pattern, which is the S-curve. In the beginning, we don't understand what it is, then it starts to grow and it becomes normal. I take mobile phones as an example. I love this early mobile phone use. I don't know what the gentleman on the left's job description was, but he basically had to hold the briefcase. But mobile phones is something that was very special, very rare, and then all of a sudden, boom, it becomes normal. And that is a phenomenon that is, I think, the typical S-curve. And I had the pleasure to do a lot of work with Carlota Perez. She is one of the leading economic thinkers of our day and age. She wrote a brilliant book on this called Technological Revolution and Financial Capital. She says, these S-curves are nothing new. We've seen this over and over again in economic history. Industrial revolution, steam, railways, mass production, telecommunications, digital. We see the same patterns, but these patterns used to take 20, 30 years to materialize. And if there's one thing that is changing, it is the speed of acceleration. Things are happening faster and faster. And I think that is going to lead to more change, more disruption, if you will. That brings me to my second favorite economist, Joseph Schumpeter. I have not worked with him, but he was a strange man. This is a man who had 3 ambitions in life. He wanted to be the most influential economist in the world. He wanted to be the best horseman in Austria, and the greatest lover in Vienna. I like people who are clear on their personal agenda. By the way, on his deathbed, this man had to admit he only achieve 2 of his life goals because, in his words, there were so many good horsemen in Austria. Strange. But he's the one who came up with the concept of creative destruction, which basically means if something really new happens, you see that some of the traditional players cannot move fast enough. And I think classic red pill, blue pill, we're going to see more of that. I think we're going to see more change. And these shocks are varied in nature. They are technological. That's what I love. It's not because digital is normal and it's over. It's a combination of new interpretations of the world, the power of information, of certainly AI and automation. And some of these really have profound effects. I love this quote: there are decades when nothing happens, and then there are weeks where decades happen. And we are living through one of those moments. And the big opportunity is for you to keep in touch. And I don't know how to do it. I have 2 kids. They help me keep sharp. This is a great example. This is UK data, but I think it travels to many countries. On the left, you see how you, adults, use technology to communicate. On the right, you see the relevance for the next generation. My favorite is that yellow part. That yellow part is making a phone call. And I don't know if there are still old people here who make phone calls, but when I call my 19-year-old son, he never picks up the phone. And what do? I call him again. That's the dumbest thing that you can do. And when I see him later that evening, I say, "Did you see me calling?" He says, yes, I did that. I said, "But why didn't you pick up the phone?" And his answer is, "Dad, it's awkwardly cringe to talk to you on the phone." The next generation finds it awkwardly cringe to talk to people on the phone. But the worrying part is, the great part below that, this is email. I couldn't survive without, you couldn't survive without email. When I asked my son, "Why do you even have an email address?" his answer is, "Dad, there are these old vintage websites where you still need an email address to register yourself." It is fascinating, and I think we're going to see more shocks. But it's not just technological, it's environmental. This is a scene from Blade Runner 2049, love the movie, but that was science fiction. This is reality. This is New York after Canadian wildfires. We had Texas freezing over. I mean, here in Belgium, we had the worst floods in hundreds of years. We see that it made a lot of people very angry. That's probably what worries me the most, the potential for social seismic shocks. And geopolitically, as we mentioned, we're living in probably one of the most unstable eras ever. And if you add that up, that, becomes a bunch. The word of the year in the UK 2 years ago was polycrisis, one misery after another. But that is the British optimism shining through. But if you look at that, I think we have to reverse that. Instead of seeing this uncertainty as something to fear, I think we should leverage that. That's when I started calling the never normal. This is a strange world. It's a strange context. It's something tiny can just completely screw things up. And I'm always reminded of those famous words by Roosevelt of the unknown unknowns. You have your known knowns, you know what you know. You have your known unknowns, you know what you don't know. But more and more, we live in a world of unknown unknowns. And that's what I call the never normal. And I think it is really an opportunity. But then you have to understand it if you want to leverage it. It has, for me, 4 characteristics. It's super fluid, non-linear, it's hyper-connected, and it's moving faster than anything we've ever seen. And I'll start with fluidity. The pandemic was a great example. All of a sudden, everything changed. March 2020 will be etched in our minds. And, it was a game changer. And offices changed for good. And it was more than just a virus. It was more than technological change. We had to get used to things that we never thought we had to combine. And I was really glad that my kids were older, because I had colleagues with younger children. It was a nightmare. I love this Fisher-Price work-from-home toolset, including video conferences, crying babies, and water bottles. But now we're going back to the office. No. I was in Boston a few weeks ago, and I had the chance to visit Akamai, one of the big infrastructure players on the internet. Huge company. Amazing new headquarters built in Kendall Square, next to MIT, in 2020. This is a building in downtown Cambridge, Massachusetts, with a capacity of 2,500. Average daily attendance, 200. And that means something has changed. I mean, in the US, we're not getting office occupancy over 50%, so maybe we just have to trust people when they work from from home. But then you can buy this on Amazon for $23.99. This is an undetectable mouse mover. And the use case is if you work from home, you mouse in the undetectable, makes random mouse movements. And you think, wow, we're very productive today. And even the use case on Amazon is like, but what was fascinating in this period is the creativity. And I love what Hawking said, intelligence is the ability to react to change. And that's what we need in a world that is increasingly fluid. Number two is we're going to have to look left and right, not just straight ahead. I love Amazon. And I remember when Amazon was a place where you could buy a book or a CD online. Now AWS is the biggest cloud provider on the planet. They're capable of looking left and right, not just straight ahead. What is your capability to think non-linear? I think I was wrong, it's not digital, it's a world which is hyper-connected, everything is connected to everything, monetizing that information at the speed of networks, we're just getting started. But the result is a world that is moving faster. And that means that you're privileged to live in a world where there will be winners and losers. As Dickens would say, it is clearly the best and the worst times at the same time. If you add it up, it can seem daunting, but I think it's an opportunity. And I'm a big Wes Anderson fan, and I don't know if you've seen Asteroid City, but this is the best description of the never normal.
If you wanted to live a nice, quiet, peaceful life, you picked the wrong time to get born.
You picked the wrong time to get born. And I think seeing this as an opportunity is what innovation is all about. And in the end, it's not about technology. It's about getting your timing right. There's the famous theory of optionality. Whatever you do in life, you follow a pattern like this. You start, you grow, you peak, and then you decline. You can apply this to a product, a brand, an organization, life itself. If you wait too long, forget it. If you're going down, not good enough. And in the past, organizations could wait until they're at their peak, and then they'd figure out what to do. But now we have to preempt that. Now we have to innovate when we can, not when we need. Because if you wait to innovate when you need to, you are going to be too late. And this is the recipe for reinvention. Drucker said this beautifully a long time ago. Greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence, the never normal, but to activate yesterday's logic. How often in your organizations do you see yesterday's logic being used in a world that is moving faster than ever before, or yesterday's data or tools? And this is where I make a small sidestep into the world of information. I mean, we are privileged because we now have tools at our disposal that we didn't have. When I hear the challenges we had in putting all those records together and building that, ERP system to, manage that, imagine what you would need to do if you didn't have that. This is one of my favorite slides. This is the FBI fingerprint record-keeping department in 1952. No computers. They were storing fingerprints of American criminals in file cabinets. How would you label them? How would you organize them? Or even worse, when a policeman comes in and says, hey, I found a fingerprint, can you run a match? How would you do that? But we take IT for granted in a world where this is the number one challenge. More data, more information, more content, and less time to turn it into value. And the recipe is very simple. If you want to connect, you have to collect the dots. But most of us are still collecting, not connecting. And of course, this is a world where data is everything. In God we trust, as Deming said, all others must bring data. But unfortunately, in many organizations, there is more fiction written in Excel than in Word. And that is a challenge. It is a challenge in terms of quality. And of course, AI is the big buzzword now these days. When I was a kid, I was fascinated by will computers ever beat us at chess. In 1997, Kasparov was defeated by IBM Deep Blue, and I watched that game on television. The moment he lost, I thought, wow, game changing. But it took a while for this to become mainstream, but here it is. And I think it's going to be wow and scary at the same time. This was a cover of The Economist, AI is never going to happen. I'll show you a book. This is my favorite AI example. It's called Storytelling. Children born with a hearing disability, they have to learn how to read, and many children's works have not been translated into sign language. So they have captured some of the best sign language experts in the world, built the algorithm, populated the model, and now the child can pick up an app, point it at any children's book, and it will interpret that in sign language in real time for this child to learn how to read. That is wow, heartwarmingly wow. But there's plenty of stuff that isn't wow. This is highly controversial. This is basically an AI-powered lie detector that you could put on a video feed, like a Zoom call or a Teams meeting, and see if the person you're talking to is lying or telling the truth. That's already a little bit more controversial. But make no mistake, this is mainstreaming like I've never seen. A great example is this app called Brickit, freely downloadable. This is for if you have kids who love Legos. The use case is very simple. You throw all your Legos onto the floor, and the app then makes a catalog of all the bricks that are lying on your floor. And based on what the app sees on your floor, it will then make suggestions what you can build with the bricks that are lying on your floor. And if you say, hey, that's a cool one, I want that one, it will then generate the instructions step by step on how to build what you just selected. That would have been impossible, and now it's mainstream. So I think digital is done. We're entering a new world. We don't even know the behavior patterns. You've probably all seen this, but I love this. Driverless car in San Francisco, stopped by the police. Imagine what goes through that policeman's head. Where did it go? And then he walks back, and then the car says, I'm getting out of here. I don't trust it. It's a fabulous new set of behavior patterns. But we have to see them as wheels for the mind. As an Apple collector, this is one of my favorites. This is the Scientific American article of March 1973. And this is the inspiration where Steve Jobs read this, and 3 years later he would create Apple. And it's an article on bicycles. And there's one graph in there that looks at all the different species on the planet and how much energy they can intake and how far they can travel. And the king of the hill is the condor. With the least energy, least food, condor can travel the furthest. Humans are mediocre performers. But if you give the humans a bicycle, they will outperform the condor. And Steve Jobs says, we're not building computers, we're building wheels for the mind, bicycles for the brain. I think this is how we have to see these new opportunities. And we're going to need them in a world with more volatility. This never normal, I call them Hemingway moments. You might have heard this story, but I love this. Ernest Hemingway, a famous writer, went bankrupt. And when he went bankrupt, a journalist went and said, Mr. Hemingway, how did you go bankrupt? He said, in 2 ways. Gradually. And then suddenly, right? And there was a fabulous description of the type of dynamics, roller coaster rides that we're going to experience in this never normal. And I wrote a book on this called The Phoenix and the Unicorn, where I was getting a little tired of unicorn stories, but I wanted to find themes. These are companies with history, 25 years old, with legacy, with battle scars, who can reinvent themselves. And I think we've had 10 years of applause for the unicorns. I think it's now time for the phoenixes. And I've had a chance to work with you on a couple of occasions. I think you guys are 25 years old, but I think a phoenix in transition. What I've seen with the phoenixes is they have one thing that they focus on, and that's what I call the day after tomorrow spirit, mindset. And that's a model that I've been using for a while. Very simple. How much time do you, as the leaders of this organization, spend on today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow? And it's a very simple model, but what is today? Today is the hundreds of emails. It's the messages, the Zoom calls, the WhatsApp eats up all of your. I don't know which one of you drives to work on Monday morning naively thinking, today is going to be a productive day. And then it turns to shit 9:15. That's the reality of all of our lives. Problem, biggest problem, tomorrow thinking. It's where we extrapolate our comfort zone and hope that next year is going to be approximately the same. That is really scary. Favorite example is budgets. I love budgets. Budgets is a yearly sarcastic corporate ritual where people put fake years in Excel and is consolidated into which never works. It's a joke. But then there's the day after tomorrow. These are the new ideas. These are the innovations. These are the transformations that will change the world. How much time can you spend on today, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow? And the polite answer is, oh, so much time. Reality is 93.70. The problem is value. Today is important. Tomorrow even more so. But that becomes crucial if you want to keep reinventing. Phoenixes focus on the day after tomorrow. Nice story, but most companies have an addition to this one. A big red square with negative energy, which we've labeled the shit of yesterday. And what can you do as an organization to balance it? Your guests in Belgium, we have a lot of surrealist painters in Belgium. You have to live in Belgium a while to realize why we have so many surrealist painters. But this is the greatest of all times, the Nîmes. And I love this painting, La Clairvoyance. How can you interpret the egg and figure out what your bird day after tomorrow is going to be? I wrote a book on what happens in the world of retail. Retail is changing in front of our very eyes. If you have kids, you understand this. I love this Santa Claus letter of a young girl who writes, "Dear Santa, how are you? I'm good. Here is what I want for Christmas." And then the Amazon That's the reason why Amazon has been so transformational. But I found a lot of inspiration in Walmart, a company of 1.7 million employees, completely reinventing itself. Walmart has 70 plus years of history, and to see them transform was absolutely fabulous. The bigger you get, the more difficult it is to transform. But it is not impossible. And Warren Buffett says, if I invest in business, it has to be like a strong castle with a deep moat. I want sharks in the moat. And this is a great recipe to survive. If you really want to make a mark, it's about thriving, not surviving. It means that you have to be bold on your vision and then flexible on the details. And ask yourself this question: when you think about the future, are you bold enough? And then are you flexible to make it happen? Reinvention is core. And the worst thing is that you think you're innovative, but you're not. And I don't know which one of you speaks German, but I think German is one of the most beautiful languages in the world. And the reason is, the Germans have a capability of combining words into extremely long words for which virtually no other languages have a word. This is my favorite German word. It's called Eisenbahnscheinweg. And the Eisenbahn is the iron road, the railroad, and Scheinweg is a false move that a soccer player makes to put you on the wrong foot. And they've combined that, the Germans, to describe the feeling you have when you're in the station, in a train, standing still, and next to you is another train standing still who starts to move. You feel like you're moving. And there is no word in any language except the Germans. But I read a lot of companies who suffer from what I call innovation Eisenbahnscheinweg. They think they're innovative, but they're actually standing still in a world that is moving extremely quickly. And that means that you're going to have to maybe change perspective. You're all brilliant, puzzle solvers. And I go back to something that came out of 9/11. In the aftermath of 9/11, people tried to figure out, why did this happen? And it's fascinating, when you look at the reports, they said the most important failure was not a failure of information, it was a failure of imagination. We had all the data, we had all the content, but we couldn't put it together. We couldn't imagine that future. Most of you in this room are puzzle solvers. You are very good puzzle solvers, else you wouldn't be in this room. The reason you're here is because you're the fastest, best puzzle solver that CMS has. But maybe in this world of the never known, we have to become mystery solvers, more than puzzle solvers. This is a world that is now accelerating, going faster and faster. Technology changes, economy changes, society. You have the potential to make an impact. And I hope it inspires you. I'm also aware that there's still plenty of people who don't see the amazing opportunities of all these brilliant things that could happen. But I think we owe it to ourselves to be optimists. What you see here on the left is 1903, where the Wright brothers, who were bicycle repairmen, went to a beach and used their spare parts from their bicycle shop to build something that allowed us to fly for the first time. What you see on the right is 1969, the year that I was born, when Apollo 11 put Neil Armstrong on the moon. Between 1903 and in 1969 is only 66 years. Imagine what you're still going to see in your lifetime, in your career. The worst of the thing is, we're here. They are. That's going to be it. That's it. Really? I mean, imagine if this is true. That this is now the best it's going to get. That the highlight of the 21st century is that we have a couple of engineers in Palo Alto who built a platform on which we can like cat videos. Or that we can bring back disco singers from the 1970s into virtual reality. Now, but you don't have a lot of time. I don't know if you know what this means, but I love it. This is a man who worked at the same organization his entire life. And every year, they need to take a badge picture. And after 4 years, he realizes, oh my God, I've worn the same outfit for 4 years. And I'm going to keep doing that until the day that I retire. And you see this man age in front of your eyes. And it makes you realize that we have a limited amount of time to make it happen. I'll end with 3 quotes. I'll start with Churchill, a bit of a drama queen, but always good for a good quote. If you don't take change by the hand, it will take you by the throat. And maybe you just have to do it. I've known this slogan from Nike my entire life. I only recently found out where it came from. The founder of Nike, Phil Knight, actually, when he was starting out, he didn't have a brand or a logo. He was starting in his bedroom. He was obsessed with a serial murderer in the US called Gary Gilmore. This man committed horrible crimes. He was sentenced to death. And when he was put on death row, on the electric chair, to be executed, he was getting anxious. And he shouted out, "Just do it!" And Phil Knight thought, hey, that's a good slogan. I'm going to use that. So we can get inspired in many ways. But let me end with Maya Angelou. If you're always trying to be normal, you will never know how truly amazing you can be. I wish you the very best in the nevermore. Thank you very much.